Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode in the series of things you may have missed in The Witcher 3. Believe it or not, we still have interesting stuff to talk about in the game, and speaking of that, I do already have a rather massive playlist full of curious details from The Witcher 3, which you should definitely have a look at if you haven't yet done so. And without further delay, let's start with number 1. I've got several small details to show you here, revolving around our dear darling Triss. First off, did you know that as you're looking for the guy in the blue tunic on the fish market, Triss is actually hiding in an alleyway nearby?
Talk to Ingrid Vegelbud's servant?
Not just yet.
You can have a brief exchange with her, which even takes into account the possibility of you finding him, but not agreeing to escort him just yet.
Found Ingrid Vegelbud's servant yet?
Yes, he's waiting for us. Let's hurry.
Also, there are at least 2 other wrong blue shirt guys that you can stumble upon.
Know who'll give me the best price on trout?
But tain't the season for trout. Buy a bucket of oysters. Please the wife like never before.
Heard you can get fresh trout around here. Cheap.
What? Trout? Touch a trout? Get chewed out. Understand? It'll give you a right bollock.
And speaking of stumbling upon people, this is an incredibly small detail, but have you noticed that as you are taking Triss inside the Witch Hunter HQ, you briefly pass by the spy Yamurlak at the door? He can come into play later, where you have to interrogate him in that small house. You've probably done that if you did not let the witch hunters rip out Triss's fingernails. Another small but neat detail, which I've actually mentioned in the past, is that you can help her burn the place down with Igni, and she thanks you for it.
Thanks for your help, Geralt.
Don't mention it.
Now here's something else that happens immediately afterwards, which is nearly impossible to notice. Some time ago, when I talked about quests that are easy to miss, I briefly mentioned the one where you escort the Fistek dealer by the docks. The quest is no longer available if you don't complete it before you visit the witch hunters with Triss. But have you wondered why that is the case? During the conversation with Dijkstra, especially if you turn off your music, you can sort of hear the reason.
I suppose that explains the smoke. My treasure's not in there, is it? Burning with the witch hunters.
Didn't see it anywhere.
The quest giver actually dies at this point. See, normally when you approach this location, you see him arguing with a group of thugs, and if you do not intervene, they simply kill him and you cannot do the quest anymore.
Hit him!
La 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 la.
Now if you haven't done it yet, because Geralt gets close enough during this cutscene, the event where the quest giver dies is actually triggered. If you unlock your camera, you can even see it happen, more or less. So yeah, try to complete this quest before you meet Dijkstra here.
Let's pretend I didn't hear that. Now get out of here, before I get tired of playing make-believe.
Oh, and speaking of Triss and Dijkstra, here's another thing that you may not have noticed. You know how early on when you were hunting rats with Triss, she asks you how Yennefer is doing, and she seems unhappy regardless of which of the several answers you give.
How's Yen?
Not bad. Asking about anything specific?
Never mind. I got my answer. How's Yen?
She's fine. Asking about anything?
Never mind. How's Yen?
Don't know yet. Asking about...
Never mind.
Well, there's another similar situation with Triss when you talk to her with Dijkstra, and he mentions that the 2 of you are basically lovers. You can either correct him and say that you used to be but not anymore, or you can dodge the question. And again, Triss doesn't seem too happy in either case. If you said you're no longer lovers, she asks you why you had to disagree so adamantly.
Information's out of date. We are not.
Yes, I know. You partied a week after the summit at Loch Muin, in the woods near where the Lixella flows into the Pontar.
Didn't have to disagree so strongly.
And if you don't, she asks you why you didn't say that you're no longer lovers.
In other words, you're using us.
Using you? Never. Merely making the most of your mutual bond. Well, lovebirds, I really must be going. Good luck.
Thought you'd correct him. Say that we... you know.
So, that's our dear darling Triss. Now, before I move on from her, I'd like to plug this video of mine, where I showed what happens if you try to attend the ball while the serial killer is currently killing the mother of the host. And also, another thing which will likely be in my next video, where I'll show you several variations in the quest with Dandelion's women, one of which involves doing this quest with Triss before ever meeting Elihal, so stay tuned for that. Okay, let's move on to number 2. This one is brought to you by a viewer of mine called Sovic, or Sovich, not sure how that C with an arrow pointing down to it is pronounced, but regardless, he or she told me about a detail tied to failing the Bitter Harvest quest. And even though I love failing quests to see what happens, this one I've never tried before. So, you know how you meet this guy who tries to sell you a pass to Novigrad for 100 crowns?
What? Could dress up like Radovid and buy a gilded carriage for that much.
What am I to do if you can't afford it?
And you can reduce the price by half if you Axii him.
I think you'll swing me a discount just because.
Aye, good idea. Discount's yours, my friend.
And you can also do it by helping his brother-in-law, who turns out to be the quest giver of the Bitter Harvest quest.
What is it?
Got work for you, 'cause you look to me eyes like a witcher. Am I right?
What do you need?
Need for my men to finish their work unharmed. But we got corpse eaters coming out all the while. Rid us of them, and we'll give you a share.
Now it turns out that if you kill the monsters but let the man die in the process, the one you met before isn't too happy about it and will refuse to give you the pass or even talk to you anymore, even if you Axiied him previously.
I actually ran into your brother-in-law. Tended to the monsters too, but he was killed.
What? You pulling me leg? Forget my offer. It's off the table, you git.
Now, while fooling around with different variations, I discovered at least 2 quite obvious bugs with this quest. If anyone from CDPR is watching, you might consider fixing them for the next gen edition. First off, you know how you can Axii him to reduce the price by half?
I think you'll swing me a discount just because.
Aye.
You can then still decide to do the other quest and get an even bigger discount.
What's your offer then? 'Cause I already ran into your brother-in-law. He and his men can work in peace.
Ah, well then, that changes everything.
Ending up at 1/4 of the initial cost.
That's better.
Now that's fine, but the bugged part is if you try to do it the other way around. If you help his brother-in-law first, the game will give you the opportunity to Axii him afterwards to once again get the 1/4 discount. However, if you choose this option now, instead of Geralt doing the sign and all that, the quest giver just instantly starts behaving as though he was Axiied before you even helped the other guy.
That's better.
Pleasure doing business with yous.
And the second bug is if you stumble upon the brother-in-law first and fail to keep him alive. You can then meet the one who sells you the pass and you can bring up the death of his brother-in-law, which rightfully gets him upset once more and he refuses to sell you the pass and all that, just as I showed you before. However, for some reason, in the end you still get the pass.
Forget my offer. It's off the table, you git.
Ye seek trouble?
Fierce man, he prowls the wood.
So I guess the quest is coded in such a way that if you did the other quest before this one is completed, you always get the pass no matter what. Alright, that's all I had for this one. Moving on to the woman who's flirting with the cow. Ever since I showed this a couple of videos ago, people have been asking me about it, so I want to show it to you properly. This was probably the weirdest thing I stumbled upon while looking for secrets in the Crookback Bog area. The scene takes place in that settlement you visit at the base of Bald Mountain, where Thekla is choosing people to visit the crones.
Never had a man. Never mind. Got me answer.
In fact, it's right next to the place from which you jump down to look for the coin. And it only happens if you return here after you've defeated Imlerith and arrived at Novigrad again. You will not see it while doing the actual quest. But as I said, if you come back at a later stage, you will see a cow behind the fence here. It can be one of several colors, and then different women will take their turns coming here and doing all kinds of seductive moves in front of it. It looks like an animation from a brothel, but despite my brothel adventures, I can't recognize it. I believe it was someone from Discord who suggested that this may be a reference to the birth of the Minotaur. You know, the legend goes that King Minos' wife fell in love with and actually got pregnant from Poseidon's bull. This was as punishment for her husband's refusal to sacrifice said bull to Poseidon. So, who knows? If any of you has any ideas of what this is supposed to mean, I'm all ears. Okay, next up, I'd like to mention a couple of small things in Blood and Wine. First off, when you visit the wine cellar with Anna Henrietta, there are a few pieces of alternative dialogue if before you talk to her, once you arrive, you actually go upstairs and find where the sangreal is stored first. Normally this happens...
Benoit said the stain came from the 1269 vintage. Let's find it.
But in case you already know where it is, it changes to this.
Benoit said the stain came from the 1269 vintage. Let's find it.
Found it, stored in a nook on the upper level, just above our heads.
Show me.
Right here, 1269. What now?
Let's see if any barrels are empty.
And another small detail, this time related to cognac, is once again brought to you by a viewer of mine called Why Me, and it finally puts my mind to rest on a certain matter. You remember the Father Knows Worst quest? After you complete it peacefully, you can find the brothers at the Clever Clogs. They are running the place and doing quite well. But there's also a painting on the wall. It itself is a reference to Sigmund Freud's picture, but what I couldn't figure out is why it looked like it can be interacted with. It lit up when you use your Witcher senses, and yet it wasn't interactable for some reason. Well, it turns out it can in fact be interacted with. You just have to be at a very specific spot and angle as you descend the stairs from here.
Victor Monart, creator of the renowned La Monart cognac. Hugo and his brother's father, must be.
Additionally, according to my viewer, the father's name and cognac are also references to a real-world drink and family from France, which fits Beauclair perfectly. Okay, with that said, we move on to Skellige and the elusive blacksmith at Kertrolda. I've got a couple of things to say about him. First off, I mentioned him and his associated quest in a video some time ago, and there I showed you a section of the game in which he's always interactable. In response, many of you pointed out ways to fix him, essentially, at any point of the game. Surprisingly, meditation often doesn't do it in my case, but apparently it always works for many people. However, what did it for me every time is saving and loading the game in front of him. And the second thing I learned about him from several of you guys, once again, which I totally missed despite talking to him so many times, is that if you choose this dialogue option once again, he will actually tell you a different story about another weapon. Initially, he always tells you about the sword.
You know by its crafter's mark that it was forged in the Isles. Belonged to Lars, who would have been the same age as I.
But if you keep choosing it, he tells you about two others at random.
Battle axe looks pretty old.
Even older than this keep, and yet still sharp. Once each year, at Sayavine, this axe speaks. It tells of blood spilt in battles, of burning villages and sunken boats. Might be a curse. And might be it drank too much human blood. What's certain is, no one wants it.
This sword's hilt is made of meteorite steel.
No. It's made from the heart of a fallen star. Whoever wields this sword will always find his way at sea, no matter how stormy the skies. But after a time it overwhelms its owner with sadness and longing for its starry home. And nothing, not even good fun and good company, can cheer him up.
Tell me a story about one of your weapons.
See this sword?
And finally, I'd like to bring up the Allgod for a moment.
Listen here, Lord Ass. You're gonna be satisfied with what you get, or I'll feed you to the ravens.
Plowing reformers.
There are a few small things that may have escaped you in this quest. First off, you can get a different introduction with him if you circle around the peasants, dispel the illusion and go straight downstairs without talking to them.
Who the hell are you supposed to be?
The local peasant folk call me the Allgod.
Can think of quite a few other more fitting nicknames.
Now you listen to me, Witcher. Have you no other duties? Missions? Swamp's dangerous. Gotta share a true terrors. Tend to them. I am no one.
Farewell. What are you doing here?
What? The sun flying from the moon? We're making offerings to the Allgod, clearly.
Ah, right. Know him. Personally, even.
Tain't true, is it? You seen him with your own gawkers.
Interestingly enough, if you do this, you never get the dialogue option to just tell the peasants to deal with it and bring as much offerings as he wants.
Fine, I'll tell him what you want, but they'll carry you out of here on pitchforks one day. You'll see. Talk to your Allgod, face to face.
And? Will he show us mercy?
Sadly, the Allgod wouldn't bend. Seems this shepherd's got a stern hand for his flock.
Told you, Trebor. Won't move him with tears. We gotta empty our larders.
Although this choice doesn't ultimately lead to a different conclusion of the quest. And speaking of conclusions, there are 3 overall, as far as I know. First, if you spare him and never give the villagers the idea to investigate what's actually down there.
Talk to your Allgod, face to face.
And? Will he show us mercy?
He will. Promise to be pleased with whatever you bring.
I told you the Allgod's merciful, understanding. Thanks, Witcher.
Farewell. The Allgod show you favor.
A week or so later, there will be a large congregation here praying to him. All the while, he complains about not getting enough.
Curds? Curds and whey? Not one raspberry? Not a drop of honey? Lean times indeed.
The second is if you kill him.
Got an idea how to resolve this. I'll just kill you.
You think this is a jest, mortal? Whosoever looks upon my godliness must die!
Got good news. Your god's dead. It was actually a run-of-the-mill monster, sentient but mean. Took advantage of you. You went hungry, while it grew new chins.
What have you done? The Allgod warned us? Said if he ever departed, death would await us all? Come on, Trebor. We must tell the others. Only group prayer can save us now.
In that case, you can follow the people all the way to the nearby settlements where they resume praying in front of other idols. And the third and most mysterious one is if you tell them to see what's down there.
Oh, one last thing. Did you know there's a crypt beneath this hill? Might want to take a look sometime. Architecture's fascinating.
In that case, a week or so later, both the peasants and the Allgod disappear, and the entrance to his lair appears to be collapsed or blocked or something. I couldn't find any sign of the Allgod or the people nearby. I even glitched my way through the ground, and there's nobody there. If any of you knows any more in this situation, please let us know. And since I mentioned bugs earlier in the video, here's another one that is related to the Allgod. You know the Skellige's Most Wanted quest, where you mention the monsters you spared?
Don't make me laugh. That's not nearly enough.
If you spare the Allgod, Geralt will instead say that he spared this guy.
There's this Sylvan in Velen. You gotta know him. I had a choice. Kill him and collect a reward from the local peasants, or talk it out with him. I chose the latter.
Sylvans are nasty schemers, But it was nice of you to spare him.
Clearly the developers mixed up the two Sylvans for some reason. I suppose it's also possible that at some point in development, the two were meant to be the same character. It may explain why this one is also fat. So I planned on ending the video here, however, another viewer by the name of Jornomi or Yornomi asked me something I wasn't sure about, so I tested it and it seems he was on point. The question was whether Geralt has anything to say to Lambert when interacting with the funeral pyre at Kaer Morhen in case both Vesemir and Lambert died. And the answer is yes. There is indeed a brief line directed towards him.
I'll remember your teachings always, and the sacrifice you made. You were a good friend, Lambert.
And on that sad note, I believe I'm done. Tell me what you thought of everything I talked about, and if you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. Special thanks to my supporters and YouTube members, and until the next one, stay tuned and be good.
One winter I found shelter here. Built a fire so large the flames leapt through the crack, lit the bushes above. I coughed from the smoke, and suddenly heard a peasant. A voice out of nowhere, he called. A miracle! Thus, I became a god.
Parasite, more like.
Maybe so. But what of Freya and Melitele then, Demanding prayers and offerings, giving naught in return? I talk at least.